Thank you very much.
Thank you, Libby. A very good morning to everybody. First thing I have to say is our president, Richard Bond, I'm afraid is joining us in a few moments. So he asked me to get things underway. So he may well join us, and I suspect he, having had the experience of hosting these, chairing these, he may be better at doing it than I am. But anyway, I'll give it my go. So very good morning, welcome to you all. Great to see lots of us. I think we got over 110 people booked in to join us this morning. Lots of members, lots of guests, some of our potential members. Also, we got one or two investors into the city who we're keen to help to bring into the initiative, to help to connect into what's happening here, because we want them to come in at a time when clearly physically they will challenge to get to come and visit here, but we can help to connect them in and get them to talk to people and hear about what's going on. We have a packed agenda, and you'll see that I was due, which I will seamlessly move into in a moment, to a little bit of an update from myself before I got some introductory comments from Richard. And then we have Sally from the public health team in Bristol, clearly after the announcements of the weekend. I think it's very timely that we spend some time on that. We've had a couple of questions, and we'll be asking you to ask some questions after that. John Hurst, our colleague from Destination Bristol, talking about what's happening certainly out on the high street, but also in the visitor economy, and hope looking a little bit further ahead as well if we can. And then our colleague Matt Griffiths, to talk about a couple of the support packages which we're trying to understand and see how we can make sure get deployed at the local level. And that's
Sorry, everybody. I'm not sure if that's me, but I think James we may have lost him. Victoria, are you there?
Yes. Hello. I'm very sorry. I thought that was just me, hence why I wasn't doing anything. I didn't want to interrupt James.
Can you hear me again?
Oh, here he is.
Sorry.
There we go.
I don't know if you can see me, hear me. Sorry, I don't know what happened there.
That's all right.
Lost contact for a second. So yeah, well, our challenge as a business community is to see our way through this next month. But there are a number of things happening that we know at both at the city and the city region level, which are positive actually under that radar, perhaps not getting the some of the airtime, understandably, that we are putting some time and energy and effort into. But we have also, alongside that, Richard as part of that, but also Phil Smith and a range of our UR members and our colleagues been working on some of the economic recovery work, both at the city region level and at the city level. I've been co-chairing the economy board in Bristol. We've published a plan last month, and also working with colleagues in North Somerset and South Gloucestershire, and my colleague Ian Bell leading the charge for us in Bath and North East Somerset. So I think we have a better sense about where we need to be focusing clearly with different parameters going forwards. With the packed agenda we have today, I don't want to say an awful lot more from Richard's piece, but there's a few things I particularly wanted to update you on. So if I move quickly into there, as I say, we've got many agendas running in parallel at the moment. And I think there's a sense for some people it's quite bewildering because the fixed points perhaps haven't been there, but we are seeing certainly across the broader Business West organisation actually sustained levels of export documentation as a proxy. I think only 8 to 10% down from last year. We have a busy program of activity across our department for international trade services work. For instance, we are taking what's called the Great British Food Programme, doing a live web launch of a new virtual store in China later this year. And we're also doing a big program around called Tech for Good, helping in tech businesses to look into the US, into India, into Singapore, and offering them a range of support and matching service. And then across our innovation team, perhaps something we don't talk about a lot here from the initiative side, we've got a team of people which we've been expanding, helping to access some of the Innovate UK support to get into how they can grow and develop their businesses. And we've got, have to say, an array of really fascinating businesses who've got some really, I think, ambitious levels of growth. And for instance, we're getting into markets like into Korea, into additive manufacturing, helping some businesses access, say, or create links and open up new opportunities and customers. And then on the skills side of Business West, we are an intermediary for Kickstart, and we're working with the Combined Authority on their skills program of activity, and we're gearing up to be able to support at a time when we know more than ever we're going to need to be able to support, well, all people, particularly our younger people, with access to the right kind of training and support levels. Closer to home within the chamber and the initiative, and I know we've got a number of chamber members on today, we've got a very busy program of activity focused around our 4 areas of focus around clean, inclusive growth, around transport mobility, and around tackling disadvantage, deprivation, and then education and skills. So for instance, within that, within the growth area, we have a thriving planning and transport and climate group where we have 50 to 60 members meeting every 5 to 6 weeks, talking about in the here and now some of the key developments that are going on, but also about some of the making sure that we can influence some of the strategic growth, spatial growth around employment land, yes, around housing, but also around some of the transport system that connects that up. There's a wealth of activity. There's some formal processes going on that we are engaging with in terms of local plans, the new strategic plan led by the Combined Authority. But we have more specifically helped more directly with helping to make sure that we can help make things happen. So for instance, a very specific, but we helped the caravan site, which is based out on the harbour side, who are being relocated off that site, to help them to get the consent that they have for a new site on the edge of Bristol in Ashton. In recent weeks, and we, together with colleagues from Destination Bristol and others, helped to support them at the relevant planning committee, which is a little piece of success, I think, about helping to make economic development happen in our city. There's a lot of work carrying on around the clean air, and within the context of wanting for us as a city to see clean air, we want to make sure that the measures that the council is moving forward are workable for businesses. So the clean air zone is something that we know is coming at us. Perhaps the measures are changing. The prospect of a diesel ban is now off the table. We are having meetings with the council at a senior level, and we've got a session next Monday for members to hear about the current range of plans and make sure that businesses understand that and are able to feed in. And we want to, I think we've got about 45, 50 people coming along to that. So I've got a slide with some details in a moment. Elsewhere within the area, I know within, for instance, the film and TV production area, we are seeing actually, I think after a challenging period, I know there are some growth, and in fact, directly ourselves within Lee Court, we've been hosting some filming from Netflix from a production which is going to get filmed over with. I see Laura on the call today from Icon. We've got some fantastic businesses. It's an area of strength that we can build on. We've got things like Wildscreen, which are such an important part of our city region, which we need to focus on. Where in the last week or so, we've made clear really our strong support for North Somerset to have the potential to join the Combined Authority, which we know there's an opportunity between now and next May. We want to make sure that our councils do take those steps. We think it's a piece for us of unfinished business that enables our whole of our city region to be part of that, the Combined Authority, and the opportunities of around growth and around working together, and about making sure that we attract the investment into the city region. So I think enough from me. Other than to say, great to have lots of you on the call today. We do want to hear from you around if the way that we're meeting the way that we're engaging with you is what you want. If there are things that we're missing, please let us know. We have been running some round tables, of which we're doing one around the Western Gateway next week. We've got a range of these events that just come up in front of you in terms of the slide there this morning, which are coming up over the next few weeks. I'm going to now move across to Sally Hogg from the Public Health team, who's going to give us probably about 8 to 10 minute update on where things are given the announcement and coming to terms with what that means over certainly between now and certainly the 2nd of December. So Sally, over to you, please.
I'll start again. Thank you, James, and thank you for inviting me to be here this morning. I'm delighted to be with you. Probably not the bearer of any wonderful news, but nevertheless. So in 7 or 8 minutes, I can't possibly go into the detail that I could easily, but I'm going to try and just give you a flavour of the last week, really. Starting off, though, by wondering how you're feeling today on this first day of lockdown. I've been thinking about my feelings, particularly in the night when I was thinking how I felt about this lockdown again. And I've got 3 words, I think: bereft for all those things that I can't do that I would like to do, particularly for me, seeing my grandchildren. Thankful that I have a roof over my head and that I have somewhere to work and I have a social network. And hopeful that by us really working together, and I mean really working together and sticking to the rules, we can get out on the 2nd of December into something that would be the next step. And we will only do that by working together. So it is of paramount importance, though, that we really support each other during this time. Mental health issues are increasing and will continue to do so. And the Thrive Business Initiative is here to help you and your businesses, and please ask if you'd like more information. But just to give you a background and to wind back a week, really. So a week ago, our rates in Bristol were rising fast. We had escalated to set up all the things that were in place, or many of the things that were in place in March. So multi-agency groups at very high level, city leaders, working with our NHS partners. And we had processes in place across the city to move us into what was called last week Tier 1 plus. By the end of the week, by Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we were having discussions with the Secretary of State, or Marvin, our mayor, was, about moving into Tier 2. And then maybe we were recognising that we might need to go into Tier 3 eventually. And then on Saturday, with absolutely no prior warning, and I really want to highlight that because we had no more opportunity to think about this than anybody else in the country. We heard it perhaps on Friday evening, the same as you would have done, and have had to go from there. So this is a very movable feast. The only thing that we would say is that it could be good in terms of supporting businesses, because I think the packages are probably better through furlough and other things than they would have been through a Tier 2, which actually doesn't produce much help at all. So moving on then to why we're in the situation we are. Since March, we've had 7,410 cases. In the last 7 days, we've had 1,825. And the week before that, we had 1,662. So those of you that are very quick at maths, and I'm sure most of you are better than me, that means we've had nearly half of our cases in the last two weeks. Average number a day, 261. And our rate per 100,000, and you'll remember I've talked before about why we do things per 100,000, is 394. Now, to put that in context, North Somerset are 174, South Gloss 275, Baines is 236, Somerset itself is 80, England is 230, so we're way above now the England rate. And then at the other extreme, at our highest levels, we've got Oldham at 742 and Blackburn and Darwin at 706. So you can see that we need to do something that is very significant here to halt the rise of COVID. So our rates are still the highest in the 18 to 22 bracket, followed by the 22 to 30 bracket, but it's now spreading across the population as we predicted it would do. Yesterday we had 270 per 100,000 in the 60 to 69 bracket. And that's where we start to get concerned, because with that, our hospital beds admissions are rising. We had 138 yesterday, 64 people needing oxygen, 19 people needing an intensive care bed, 4 deaths in the last week. So you can see that things are changing quite significantly. But it's a very fine balance we're facing. We're facing the health of the population due to infection, as you know, versus the health of the population due to the hardship that COVID will bring. Having a roof over your head and a job is the very best thing for population health that any of us could do. And so you can see that's a really difficult balance. We, as in public health, the council, all of our city partners are doing absolutely everything we can, both regionally. We are driving down every single infection in the city, which is busy. And with lockdown now and the schools and universities open, it is still very busy, particularly in our settings. So care homes, schools, universities, workplaces. We are working with every single one of those that has an outbreak and helping them to look at everything that they're doing and contain the virus. And that's really important. But it's tough. We're calling this a social party virus. It moves very fast in social contacts, situations. It is much easier now since we've been out of lockdown and we've started to move around the city. And I think most of us have started to not pay quite as much attention as we were doing in the first place. But we are at a place now where we really need your help. So you can help us. We need absolutely everybody to take this seriously. We've got to try and abide by the rules, however hard they are. And this goes for me as well as for each one of you. This is hard. It's really hard, but we need you to do it, please. We've got to stay at home, apart from the things that we're allowed to do. And we need to remember hands, face, and space. And we also need to remember that kindness and support is going to be really critical to us in the next few weeks. And as we move forward, and we don't know what that's going to look like post December the 2nd, but we do know if we do all these things, then the chances of us coming out of lockdown on December the 2nd are higher. We don't know what's next. They're talking at national level that we will go back into tiers, which would mean we would probably go into something equivalent to tier 2, although I suspect they could be changed before then. But the most important thing in the next 4 weeks is for us to really concentrate on what lockdown means and why it's there in the first place. We have had one question, which I'm just going to try and answer very quickly, from Kelly Thatcher. So we have Kelly. So this was a question from last week, really, about when restaurants and coffee shops and things were still open. why, when big businesses are trying so very hard to be COVID secure and doing amazing things to keep their workforce safe, are there so many food businesses that don't look as if they're COVID secure? So we have Bristol City Council Public Protection and Neighbourhood Enforcement teams. They have worked really hard during the last few months. They've sent 18,000 letters to businesses in June, providing advice and on infection control and safe working. A further letter in September, as with the government changes of the rule of 6 and curfew at 10 p.m. 4,000 visits have taken place by them to businesses. And I just want to say here that the majority of businesses are doing their very best to ensure COVID secure, but there are now some enforcement actions in place. Warning letters, fixed penalty notices, formal closure directions have been issued, and a premises last week was issued a 10,000 fixed penalty notice as a result of non-compliance. So our teams are working really hard. And although you see things going on out and about, and I have done too, that we don't think are satisfactory, these teams can't be everywhere and they're doing their best. But from this week, we're having 6 COVID marshals that are employed to advise businesses, and they're going to work very closely with the police and with yourselves. And I think that will make a lot of difference. So thank you very much for your time. I hope that has answered some of your questions, but do get back to me with any more. And if I can't answer them today, I'll come back to you.
Sally, it's Richard, and apologies for missing the start, everybody. And Sally, thank you very much for that. It was interesting, actually. I was on the city leaders call yesterday, Sally, and there were a couple of things I think that I just wanted to pick up on. We're trying to, as a group across the city, make the point that we want to work to the very best of our ability to adhere to the guidelines, not to skirt around and do the minimum. I think it's really important for us as a city that we all come together to do our very, very best, so that when we come out of these restrictions in December, that we come back into hopefully a tier that allows us to get back to a more controlled sense of normality at the lower end of the restrictions. So I think we all have a responsibility to help to communicate that message across our businesses. And I think just in the context of enforcement and compliance, I know we've been just looking in our own business around what that means for our people, and it was heartening to hear from the Chief Constable's team that, again, there is clear expectations that businesses that are going about their legitimate business, that's absolutely fine, and please carry on and continue to do so. Of course, just working a COVID secure means, but again, it's good that the system across the cities appears to be really well connected, Sally, so thank you. Great. In that case, I think we're good to hand over to John. So perhaps, John, one area of the sector, our economy, that is particularly impacted by these current restrictions, tourism, retail and hospitality. You're going to share with us your thoughts as to where the sector's up to and looking ahead to the Christmas and festive period. John, over to you.
Thank you very much, Richard, and thank you everybody for joining us today. The last of my thanks is to Sally. A very comprehensive update yet again. I feel I know you very well, Sally, and I've never met you. It's quite amazing, really. So we must do that sometime, Sally, when the time is right. And I really should try to smarten up a bit and have flowers in the background like you, but here in my office, we don't have flowers. So I'm trying to get all my good news out the way at the beginning, because there's not a lot coming of good news, I'm afraid, over the next 5 minutes. So although I have just spotted that it's highly likely that furlough will be extended to March. Now, for me and our business and our industry, our sector, that is really good news. And I think it will give a lifeline to people because we can't see an awful lot of daylight down the tunnel at the moment. And furlough will be seen by many within our sector as being good news. So my responsibilities are loosely around tourism and retail. I know there are two different areas, but tourism in this region, the value of the visitor economy for this region is massive, and it sits at around £1.5 billion. So we are talking about a big sector. We're talking about a sector that employs almost 30,000 people, and many of them are under threat. And it's the worst possible scenario that we've ever experienced. So I'll just try and give you the headlines very quickly. So this year has been a year when we've just gone from a very strong position, all change, and down to a very weak position. And the impact of the first lockdown was very strong on our sector. And interestingly and encouragingly, we did see some really good, strong signs of recovery during June, July, and August. And that rolled in a little bit into September, which was a month which saw some decline. And then October and September, second half of, with the 10 p.m. curfew, we saw a real decline in our fortunes within, especially in the hotels and restaurants, and confidence of our visitors and our residents went downwards. So would you believe that in 2019, as an organisation, Bristol had its best year ever for tourism? And you know, that was amazing, really, when you think about it. We did really, really well. And we ended up in a situation where we're now following that with a situation where we'd probably have our worst year ever in 2020 within our sector. So as I move along very quickly, plans for 2020, Christmas, well, they were all in place, even though they were downscaled from last year. We're in a position quite clearly where we had some plans for Christmas, and the majority of those have now had to be reviewed again, which results in the majority being cancelled for this year. So you will not see a Christmas like last year. You won't see phase 2, which was the plan we were having prior to this lockdown. And that would have probably been about 70% of where we were in the previous year. So I think that when we talk about retail very briefly, the figures there are quite alarming and quite staggeringly down on last year, and obviously going to get worse throughout November. There are 53 stores open, I believe, in the main area of Broadmead and the galleries today, and they are classed as essential stores. So lots of people, interestingly, will be shopping locally and hopefully and shopping online as well. That is a real challenge for us, the online side of things, because it takes away the Bristol element. So just 3 quick points to summarize. Most hotels will be open for key workers only during this period of lockdown, which obviously is bad news for the hotels, in as much as they'd want to be attracting lots of people to the area for pre-Christmas activities. Attractions, really equally difficult for them, and after a very bad year, if you take the situation with We the Curious, they were due to open next week, and now they can't, so our thoughts go out to them as well. But my final point would be Christmas this year is going to be completely different to everything we've ever seen before. We must follow Sally's guidance and really try and protect the city and all those people that work here and live here. But we've also got to work together to try and prepare for a big recovery in 21 just as soon as we can. I mean, it's absolutely critical, and we just must stress the point that we can only get back to where we were by doing things together as a team in Bristol. So thank you. Sorry if it went over a little. There's a lot to talk about, and I'm happy to take questions at any time. Thank you very much.
John, thank you ever so much. And I think that we'll perhaps pick up a couple of thoughts a little bit later on, actually. And I can see there's a couple of people who might be able to just contribute to that later. So before we do that, I'd like to introduce two different organisations. So we've got colleagues from Bristol Vic who are going to just share with us perhaps one or two of their opportunities. So if I could ask the Bristol Vic rep, I think we're going to talk for a couple of minutes, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tom Morris. I also have with me
Thank
Julie.
you, Tom.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
So, oh, look at that. We got an official presentation. Let's take that away for a minute, Julia, so I can just do a general chat first of all.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is completely surreal. So obviously, since Saturday, we've been busy closing down our operation again, having got it open in August, and we've been slowly rebuilding our program. And now we're having to close it all down again. I would love to get into a longer conversation about what people's views are about the possibility of a Christmas unlock and January relock, but this is not probably the moment for that. When this meeting was scheduled, it was due to give us the opportunity to invite people to participate in a show, Surreally. And if you've got the headspace, I can in a minute tell you about what that proposition was. Shall I go ahead?
Yeah, that'd be great,
Right.
Tom. Yes, please.
Okay,
Thank you.
good. So obviously we haven't been able to operate it normally as a theatre, and what we decided to do was to commission a poet called Vanessa Kasule to write something that we could turn into a show which for Christmas, which was partly online, partly filmed and partly performed live. And our inspiration was the way in which in the Middle Ages they staged mystery plays. I don't know if people know about that, but what happened was a city would together create a cycle of plays drawn from the Bible, retelling stories from the creation, Adam and Eve, the nativity, whatever else. And different bits of the city would retell different stories. The different guilds would tell different stories. So the shepherds would tell one story, the cheesemakers would tell another story, you know, the shipbuilders would tell another story, and then they'd all be performed together. So our thought was we'd commission Vanessa, who's an amazing poet, to write something, and then we would choose different representative groups from the community to work with on different stories. Julia and I were yesterday morning surreally in Stoke Park Primary School working on the story of Noah's Ark with Year 1. We've also been working with a community group from Southmead on a version of the Nativity play. And in each case, obviously, in lockdown, some of these things, again, end up being entirely on Zoom. We're having to change the rules as we go, and we don't know at this point whether there will be any live performance element at all. But we're choosing to play the role of idiotic optimists in the face of overwhelming evidence to the contrary, and assume that we will be able to do something. So this is essentially, Julia, do you want to now share what we've got? There's a little bit of stuff which explains about it.
Lucy, have you got it?
Well, Lucy's got it. She's all over it. There we are. And you can take this away with you if you want to think about it. But the idea was that one of the groups that we would work with would be the businesses of Bristol. It would be you guys in some sort of form. Richard, I'm probably running out of time, but if you want, I can tell a story in 2.5 further minutes to amuse.
Well, I think we'll take
get
the
on with
gift.
business.
We'll take the gift of your opportunity, Tom, actually. So this sounds intriguing, and actually this is uplifting in the context of the situation around us. So carry on,
Okay,
Tom.
good. So get rid of the screen share so I can see everyone again. I'm going to tell you a story, which is the story of the Nativity as it was told by the shepherds of Wakefield in the middle of the 15th century. And the story
Strap in. It's a banger.
It's a banger. Okay. So the story is that the shepherds of Wakefield were out in the meadows outside Wakefield counting their sheep at the end of the day. The point of telling this is that there's something very weird about these stories, by the way. They retell the stories as if they're happening now, which in that case is 15th century Wakefield. In our case will be 21st century Bristol in a pandemic. Anyway, so there they are. The shepherds of Wakefield are in the fields outside Wakefield. They're counting in their sheep. It's snowing. It's winter. It's very cold. They're counting in their sheep into the pen and they go, one's missing. One of the sheep is missing. Where's one of the sheep? It's gone missing. They're looking around. Have you got it? Have you got it? No, we've lost it. And then one of them says, I know where our sheep is. And they say, where is it? And they say, Mac, the sheep stealer, must have stolen our sheep. And they say, who's Mac and why do you suspect him of stealing our sheep? And they say, he's called Mac. He's known as a sheep stealer. He's obviously stolen our sheep. Let's go to his house and get our sheep back. So off they go to Mac's house and they knock on the door. And Mac opens the door and he says, what do you want? And they say, are you Mac the sheep stealer? And he says, Mac, not so much the sheep stealer. What do you want? And they say, have you stolen our sheep? And he says, no. And they say, come on, you're known to be a sheep stealer. We've lost our sheep. You've obviously stolen it. Give us our sheep back. And he says, no, I haven't done it. And they said, look, Mac, it's cold. We've come a long way. Please give us our sheep. And he said, I couldn't have stolen your sheep. My wife has just had a little baby. And I've just been with her while she was giving birth. So please leave me alone. And shamefacedly, they turn away and they walk back up the hill saying, I wonder where our sheep was then. We've lost our sheep. And then one of them says, I feel a bit guilty. He's just had a beautiful life-changing experience. Why don't we go back and give him some presents? And then one of them finds a bit of mistletoe. Another one finds a bit of holly with some berries on it. And another one finds a little curly stick. And they go back to Mac's door and they knock on the door. He says, what do you want now? And they said, look, we're really sorry. We've got some presents to give your baby. And he says, thank you very much. Goodbye. And they say, no, we just want to give them to the baby, if that's all right. And he says, okay, but just be quick. And they come in and there in a little manger, they can see a little swaddled baby there breathing. And next to it, there's a little ox. And then there's Mac's wife, Mariah, next to the manger, and they go over and they say, well, can we have a look? And Max says, just a quick look, because he's been fast asleep. And then one of them goes over and just opens the blanket a little bit and says, oh, Mac, he's got a bit of a sheepy face, your baby, hasn't he? And Max says, what do you mean? How dare you be so rude about my baby? What do you mean? It's just been born. It's just the trick of the light. And another one goes over, just give him a little tickle on his tummy and says, oh, Mac, got a bit of a furry chest, your baby, hasn't he? For a baby. And Mac says, how dare you be so rude? I've just had a baby. Another one goes, I'm just going to hold him by the hand. And goes, oh, Mac, he's got a little bit of a hoofy hand, hasn't he? And they tear off the blankets. They see it's the sheep. They say, Mac, you stole our sheep. We've caught you red-handed. And they take Mac outside his house and they give him a traditional Wakefieldian punishment, which is that they put him in a blanket and they throw him up and down in the air and throw him up and down in the air for a punishment for stealing their sheep. And they're just in the middle of that and they hear an amazing noise. Where's that coming from? And they look around and they look up in the sky and there's 74 angels up there singing. They go, what's going on with the angels? What's happening? And then the angel at the front, he leans over and he looks down and he says, shepherds, what are you doing? And they all say, well, it's Mac, he's stolen our sheep. We're just giving him the traditional Wakefieldian punishment for stealing sheep and throwing him in a... And the angel says, don't do that. This is not a moment for that. This is a very special night. And they say, what do you mean? And the angel says, this evening, down in Church Street, in Wakefield, there's an inn. And the inn's all full up, and at the back there's a little stable. And tonight, the baby Jesus has been born in Wakefield. He's going to do a lot of work in his life. It's going to be very important. You don't want to be bothering with Mac. Get your presents and go and give them to the baby Jesus who's born in Wakefield. And they pick up the curly stick and the mistletoe and the holly and the berries, and Mac picks up the sheep. And they all go down and they knock on the door and they go into the stable, and there they see Mary and Joseph and all of that. It's the Nativity. So that is the story of the Nativity as told by the shepherds of Wakefield in the 15th century. And that's your story for today. And the point of it is that when they tell the story, of course, it makes it feel as if everything is happening now. So our ambition was that we would be able to do that with different groups telling different stories. And our invitation is for anyone who wants to come and join in a workshop, which Julia and I can muck about with you, which will probably be on Zoom at this point, and see whether there's a story that we could all tell together. Although we don't know yet whether it might actually fit into a live performance or what it might fit into. That's the best I can do in a pandemic. Any questions?
Tom, thank you so much. And we've all felt a little bit uplifted. Thank you. You've taken our minds off many of the things that are around us. Brilliant. And well, Victoria and the team, I am sure, will muster colleagues from across the membership to engage with you, actually. I'm sure we'll be delighted to if we can organise that. And actually, that cultural piece, as I said, is just so important for us, particularly now. So I do hope you can bring, Tom, that together. And there are other colleagues from different organisations who are equally working really hard to keep that spiritual part of the city alive.
Great. And just so you know, we are announcing a whole lot of other things that we're doing over Christmas. We're announcing those today and tomorrow. This isn't in it because we're still having to work out how we're doing it, but we are still going to do this in some form.
Brilliant. Tom, thank you ever so much for that. That's really appreciated.
A pleasure. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, no, that's great. So I'm going to go back. I hadn't realised, Matt, just to get back to the more mundane, actually, after that uplifting moment. Matt, you're going to talk very briefly, I think, just in terms of where we as a Chamber are around supporting organisations on Brexit. Clearly, that's another major issue that we're just having to work with as we transition. So, Matt, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. I certainly feel like everything is happening now. But I'm quite glad I don't have a new baby to deal with, or indeed a shepherd. So I thought I'd give you everyone a very quick update about two very movable feasts and dramatic stories. The first one is not Brexit, it's just about lockdown. And just to let you know what we're doing and monitoring around that. I mean, clearly the public health issues are paramount, and we would encourage companies to encourage their staff to follow the rules and support their staff as well. And but Bristol's One City office asked us to give a plug to Thrive West of England and mental health and how important that is over the coming month. So please do that. Just to let you know, rather like Sally, we were completely caught off guard on Saturday. Indeed, for the past month, we've been engaging with Treasury officials. We've been having meetings about the previous job support scheme and details, and we did a Points West Q&A about how it would operate. And then lo and behold, I was on Points West on Monday, rather suggesting frustration, but it's all gone up in the air and completely changed. The good news is that the support package is more generous to match the degree of disruption and lockdown that's going to happen. And we are trying to keep an eye on what the details are and support our companies through that. So the furlough scheme is back to where it was in September. John Hurst pipped me to the post because I think the Chancellor is speaking at the moment about its further extension. Self-employed support is more generous after significant lobbying around that. And there is also going to be another wave of business grants via the local authorities and the business rates system. Although true to form, we have no idea how that's going to be administered at the moment. So we are reaching out and talking to our local authorities who are themselves waiting for guidance from central government. In addition, the Chancellor is saying something at the moment, and we hope he'll address some of the gaps that exist out there, and notably around the excluded campaign and limited companies and those types of things. So we have a hotline to central government officials on this. If there is an area where you are struggling or where you don't understand or where you feel the current support is inadequate, where you need gaps to be plugged, then do contact us, because it is one of those rare moments where central government officials are moving at pace and are listening hard as well. So please do that. But we're also looking for positive stories. So if your company is growing, please do get in touch. We'd like to share something positive as we lead up to Christmas, and we'd also like you to support the particular strengths and vulnerabilities of our city, and whether that's retail or our creative sector and other things. So that's just a very quick update there on Brexit. This is probably one for another week, given how fast things are moving. But the dance of the deal goes on. Word on the street is that there may be a deal announced next week. And when that is announced, we will be very much focusing on what it means for you and how you can adapt. We're doing a export shared event with a debate on the 12th, which may be the day after a deal is announced, to go through some of the details. And critically, we'll be looking at some of the issues around the export documentation side, where you need to do things like customs declaration if you're an exporter, and looking at the degree of flexibility in terms of implementation of the detail. So we're still thinking Jan to June will be a critical period where you need all the support and advice you can get, and also we need to feed back to central government where things aren't working as well. Final plug from us is we're doing a survey which is going out today, the QES, which is really critical for getting our intelligence up to government on things like lockdown support. So if you do see that, we will circulate a link for that. If you do see that, do please fill it in. It's really vital. It goes to a Bank of England, it goes to senior officials, and we're always looking for companies to speak about all the Financial Times about the issues that are affecting them. So give me a call or send us an email. Very happy to respond, because that's what we're here for.
Brilliant. Matt, thanks ever so much for that. And as you say, some interesting times to just see where we get to around a deal over the coming couple of days and weeks. Great. I think, therefore, we're going to move on to Q&A. And I haven't seen too much in the chat box, so if people want to either raise a hand or put something into the chat box, that's fine. But we have had a pre-question, which I'm going to open up with. So the question came in from Marty Burgess, partner at Bevan Britton. And her question is, what can we do to ensure the revitalisation of the city centre? How can we think about what we've got to do to change around the pandemic and the way people live and work? I just thought, actually, we've got Mayor Tim Bowles on the line. So I wonder whether, Tim, you might be able to just talk about how the wider West of England Combined Authority recovery plan perhaps talks to city centres. And I know as well colleagues from Bristol City are also looking at this particular issue. But Tim, I wonder whether you might just come in and talk very briefly to how that work might respond to Marty's point.
Richard, thank you. And of course, very happy to. Always enjoy when I've got a bit of free time being able to join these. So Tom, thank you for lifting all our spirits. So I'd like to just reflect a little on particularly this, but expand it out a bit, because there's a number of things that have already been touched on that are part of that recovery work we're doing. And in fairness, Matt's touched on one of them, which is the Thrive West of England. So what I'd like through you, Richard, because I appreciate my colleague Anthony Merritt from our business support team is here, is perhaps we could use this as a portal to share an awful lot of that much broader information that we're doing.
Yeah,
I know you're
very happy to do that. Yeah,
and Phil and others are. So thank you. But what's clear in terms of the way we put our recovery team together was we had all our key sectors involved. So our retail sector are represented, but Richard is also there because city centres are very much around the nature of our businesses, but clearly they are built as well. So there's two aspects to this as I see it, and that's both around the physical components of our city and town centres, because clearly as a region, we're looking at the entire region. So there's a key point about how the property sector adapts and evolves, and Richard's been leading work with that, but also the work we've been doing in talking to retail and how they're evolving. Now, I think what's apparent from the retail sector is clearly, as John's elucidated to earlier, there's very, very immediate short-term pressures. But what we're also seeing from the retail sector is how they are evolving themselves to, if you like, adopt a lot of those changes in how we are all consuming product and service. So it's been really interesting working with that group who are identifying how retailers are evolving and changing. What that also does there is opens up opportunities for us in addressing where that transfer of skills may come into place. Because what we do recognise through that extensive task force is there are areas that are actually seeing a lot of opportunity for new jobs and roles. and there are other sectors that are struggling. So there is an opportunity now for us to actually do that, thinking about how the high street and city centre changes, how we change in how we live and work, how we change in how we travel around the region, but also, as John's touched on, how we may well find we start becoming more localised in our consumption patterns. So lots of work going on in those spaces. To answer Marty's direct question, there isn't one simple answer, and that simple answer is not going to sit with one group, whether it's retailers, whether it's the landlords, whether it's the developers, but it's got to be that broad approach. So please be assured we are working really carefully across all of those areas, not just with the city centres, but also how our high streets and towns evolve and change as well. Hopefully that gives a little bit more info, Richard, but please, we're happy to share and use this route as getting more information out to everybody.
Thank you very much. And I would just say that there's a lot of work that's gone on that's pivoted towards dealing with the pandemic. So we'll absolutely be happy to share that. I know I've also got Mike Jackson on the call, Chief Executive of Bristol Council. And Mike, I think you might want to just come in because we have a city focused group as well. Mike, do you want to just come in as well? So thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Richard. Given the shortage of time, Richard, I was just going to highlight the fact that the Bristol One City Economic Recovery and Renewal Strategy has a specific city centre focus. So in terms of Marty's original question, if you haven't had chance yet to look at the Economic Recovery and Renewal Strategy for Bristol, there is a specific section in there on the city centre where we attempt to pull together the various interventions that might go towards helping the city centre recover. Perhaps I'll see if I can find a link and put that in the chat as well if people haven't already.
Brilliant. And if not, we'll get that through to the team and we'll circulate that. But Mike, thanks ever so much for that. So have we got any other comments? Let me just have a quick look in here. Can't see too much. Oh, Sean, I have a question around transport, holding service providers to account for no-shows. Oh, sorry, is that Sean? Have a question?
Yeah, it's hi. Can you hear me?
Hi,
okay?
Sean. Over to you. Yeah, over to you, Sean.
Yeah, this is a real bugbear of mine. I live on the outside, live in Eastern Ingledeno, so I'm on the main sort of Portishead track into Bristol, and there's been a couple of times it's becoming increasingly regular that when I want to go into town, I want to sign up to public transport, I want to sign up to the Green Initiative, but when the one form of transport just does not show, then I have to get in my car and go into town, which is increasingly becoming a vehicle hostile city. How, what do you recommend? I can't getting on the bike is far too dangerous. I would love that option. So, it's helpless.
Well, I think, across the system, we're doing a lot of work. We often have James Freeman on, and I know that, First Bus have done a lot of work to help to provide us with real-time information. But again, I wonder, Tim, if you might just come in to perhaps talk about some of the wider initiatives that we're working on across the region that might help to respond to Sean's point.
Yeah, Richard, thank you very much. Can I just directly pick up Sean's very immediate point?
Yeah.
We now have an integrated transport team that works across all of the WECA group areas and works directly with both the bus providers and train providers. So Sean, we've got people who are in daily touch with all of those people. Don't know the individual case clearly here, but if you'd like to feed back through our integrated transport team, they will always pick those questions up for you. So at the moment, our bus services and our trains are effectively being run with direct government support and finance. The bus usage, thinking back to a report a bit earlier, is in the low 40% in terms of use, though we expect that may well drop shortly in terms of lockdown. However, the bus providers are providing over 100% of their previous mileage. Now, that might seem slightly counterintuitive, but if you remember that effectively bus operators can only get half the number of people onto the buses because of social distancing, they're actually running more in terms of mileage than they were pre-lockdown. So, Sian, I'll try and get somebody to, I'll pick up an email from somebody afterwards and give you that answer.
Well, thank
So
you.
that's what's happening in those spaces. There's work daily going on with operators and DfT around that future funding to keep our public transport operating. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tim, and we'll connect up via the team. So as a follow-up. So I'm just conscious that we have a minute left. I don't know if there's any final points anybody wanted to quickly raise, other than I think what I'll do is I'll bring this stage of the session to an end. So again, can I just say a big thank you to all of our speakers and contributors. It's been a really helpful and interesting session. We've learned a lot and we've been uplifted by Tom and the team. We're going to move on to, well, can I also just say that, of course, it's an ongoing set of challenges that many of us do face. And I think I just want to reinforce the fact that we as leaders have an ongoing responsibility to our staff and our people. I know in my own organisation that people have been a bit disheartened with the current announcements. And let's just remember that we've got a lot to do to look after our staff, who many of whom are working well above and beyond or through very difficult times and situations. So I think that's just an important point. But otherwise, can I say thank you again? And then for those who want to stay on, we're going to just bring a slightly different approach to the more informal networking. Victoria, Nina and the team are going to create some little chat rooms, and we're going to have a chance to just socially move around in a virtual way, very distanced, for some ongoing conversation for those who are around. For those who need to leave us, thank you very much for joining us. And for those who've contributed, again, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Richard. See you soon.
Thank you. Take care, Tim. Thank you.